welcome to the 8th weekly lecture of our program Samachar Manthan. This week we will be covering from 22nd July to 28th July. So like the earlier lectures, we will start with the mains lectures, or we will start with the mains issues, and then we will go to the prelims issues. So as you know that Parliament is in session, therefore every day a new bill is being presented, and therefore most of the mains issues will be dominated by these bills and acts and policies. So let's talk about the first issue of this week, which is Prevention of Corruption Amendment Bill. So this bill was, or the original act was passed in 1988, and this is an amendment of that act, and this act will have 5 main components. The first component deals with bribery. So in the amendment bill, not just taking bribe but also giving bribe has been considered as an offense. So if you, in the earlier act, only when you take bribe, you will be considered as a culprit. But in this amendment bill, even if you offer bribe, even if you give bribe, you will be considered as a culprit also. So there is in the previous bill, or in the initial bill, this bill was, or this bribe giving was considered as an offense even for coercive and for the other things. So coercive bribe giving means that when a government official forces you to give bribe, it's a very life and death situation for you, and you have to get your work done, and in that circumstances, if an official tells you, or if it asks for the bribe, that can be considered as a coercive bribe because you have no other option. Second is when you yourself offer bribe to the official without him being asking you. So you go there, you said, sir, take this 1 lakh rupees and get my work done. That is a different kind of bribe, right? So in this amendment bill, coercive bribe is not considered as a crime if within 1 week of giving bribe you report to the authorities. So if you give the bribe today and within next 1 week, if you go to the authorities and tell that this official has asked bribe from me, you will not be considered as a culprit. But if you don't say anything for 1 week, then you will be considered as a culprit. So in this case, we said it includes both bribe taker and bribe giver. Second important component of this act is pre-investigation approval. So in the earlier act, for investigating and case of corruption, you don't require any kind of permission. But under the amendment bill, even for starting the investigation, you will require the permission of the senior authorities or the relevant authorities. But this is not valid in case of when you are caught red-handed. So if you are caught taking bribe red-handed, then this clause will not be applied. In all other cases, you require a pre-investigation approval from the relevant authorities before you start investigating a case against any official or against any public servant. Next is sanction for prosecution. So 2 changes have been brought in the sanction for prosecution under the amendment bill. Sanction for prosecution means that after investigation, before you prosecute any official, you require the sanction of the appointing authority or the higher authorities. So two new things have been included in this. Firstly, in the old bill or in the old act, only the officers above the post of joint secretary, for that you required, or officials who are joint secretary and above, not just above, joint secretary and above, only they were required to give the, or only in that cases you required a sanction. So if an official is of the post of joint secretary and above, then the investigating authority would require the sanction of the higher authorities or the appointing authorities for prosecuting that bureaucrat. But now in this amendment bill, all the public servants are covered under this. Which means even if you are a clerk and there is a in the investigation, it is found that you have been involved in some corrupt activities, then before prosecuting me, I will, or the investigating authority will require permission of the higher authorities. So this is a change that now it is applied on all public servants. Earlier, only joint secretary and above. In that case, this sanction from prosecution clause was applied. Secondly, now even the retired officials are covered within this ambit. So in the earlier act, only the serving officers got this protection. But now, even the retired officials will get the protection. Fourth feature of this is criminal misconduct. So see, now this thing, understand very, very carefully. This is very, very important. So in the earlier bill, in the earlier act, if it has been proved that with your decision, some person has benefited from your decision and no public interest has been served, then you will be liable for prosecution. So suppose, let's take an example of this. Suppose I am the Coal Secretary of India, right? And I allocate a mine to a private individual. Probably let's take the example of I give it to Ambani, right? And I mean, my intentions were very, very, it's not bad. I mean, it was not ill intention. I thought because Ambani was the best bidder, therefore I gave the allocation of these mines to Ambani. Later, Ambani was, or Ambani is involved in some or it is involved in, subverting the law. And in that case, no public interest is served. Because Ambani has misused the public resources. But I, as a Coal Secretary of India, I do not know about Ambani's or its misdealings. I have given him as an individual. I thought that he is the best person. That may be lack of judgment on my case. So there are two kinds of decision. One is mala-fide decision, and second is a bona fide decision. Mala-fide decision means that I have given this, I have allocated this mines to Ambani because Ambani gave me some kickbacks or gave me some bribe. In that favor, I gave the mines to Ambani. Second is the bona fide decision, which means that my intentions were good. I gave Ambani the mine because I thought he was the best individual. He had the best capacity. But later, my decision got wrong because Ambani, I did not knew that Ambani would be involved in this, in subverting the law or doing these illegal activities. Now, there is a misunderstanding on my part. There is a lack of judgment on my part. There is a failure of taking a good decision on my part. That is fact. There is no denying that. But I should not be held guilty for that. Because why should I be? I mean, my intentions were not to, or I did not got any favor from the money for taking this decision. It's just that I tried well, but it got wrong due to some circumstances. So in the earlier act, even when you did not got any benefit from that decision, but with your decision you have benefited someone and no public interest has been served, in that case also you would be considered, or you will be liable for prosecution. And that was the reason why, ex coal secretary of India got arrested, many other people got arrested. Now under the new amendment bill, you will have to, or the investigation authorities will have to prove that quid has happened. Now what is this? This means that I have received some material, or I have received some bribe, or I have received some materialistic benefit from the other party. Only in that case I will be liable for prosecution. So I will be liable for prosecution only in mala fide decisions, not in case of bona fide decisions. And the last component of this bill is forfeiture of property. This means that a special court will be established under the act, and this court will decide that a person who has earned his money from corrupt means, his property would be confiscated. Also, the trial will be basically on fast track, and it will be time bound trial, which means it will be finished within the certain period of time. Now let's look into the significance of this bill. So first significance is that it will have a liberating effect on honest officials. Now, the reason why we had this problem of policy paralysis in the last 2 years of the UPA rule was because of Prevention of Corruption Act, because the decision maker, or the secretaries, they were not willing to take strong decisions, or they were not willing to take risky decisions or progressive decisions, because they thought that if their decision would go wrong, they would be punished under the law. So this gave result to indecision. They thought that they will just do their routine work. They will not do any kind of they will not try to introduce any innovative policy, because if that innovative policy would go wrong, then I will be prosecuted under the law. I will be going to jail. So this had a very negative impact on the economic growth of India. I mean, because we need risky decisions, we need innovative decisions in order to grow. Policy paralysis is not beneficial for anything. It's not beneficial for the economic growth. It is not beneficial for the investment purposes. So now that the honest officials can only be punished for malafide decisions, it would mean that now the bureaucrats will be able to take these risky and innovative decisions. Next is, it also includes bribe giver. So as you know that bribes, I mean that's the simple logic that not just people who take bribe, but people who give bribe, they are also equally responsible for perpetuation of corruption in India. If anybody will not offer bribe, like in Sweden, in Denmark, the officials don't have the dare to ask bribe because they know that if they will ask for bribe, it will create a havoc and that person will go and report to all the authorities. But in India's case, the bureaucrats know that these people are, lazy people. They will not go and they will give me the bribe. So therefore, this is also a very important uh, component of this. And plus, also, it has differentiated between coercive bribery and the normal bribery. That is also important because you cannot compare people who have been forced to give bribes with the other kinds of people who willingly give bribes. Next is there is also fast track trial. This would mean that the cases of corruption would not linger on for years and years. It would get completed in time bound period. Lastly, one more thing is that even the commercial organizations are also covered under the bill. So if suppose I have a or if suppose the Civils Delhi wants to have a dealing with any government, like compared with education department, and one representative of Civils Delhi goes there and offers bribe to the official of education department. In that case, the whole Civils Delhi will be responsible for the action of my representative, which means not just that individual will be prosecuted, but whole organization will be prosecuted. This is also an important feature because generally what used to happen was that these people who used to give bribes, only they used to get arrested, but these big shots, the people who have actually sent them to give bribe, they were not arrested. So now with this, even these people will also get arrested. And lastly, it will protect the retired officials. And this would actually indirectly lead to them taking innovative decisions when they are in service, because many officials fear that we have 1 year of service left, and if we take and the decision would go wrong, our retirement pension, our retired gratuity, all will get stuck down because of it, and therefore they play safe during the last years of their tenure. And actually, that is very wrong because in the last years of their tenure, they actually reach the top post of secretary. So in that years, if you become risk averse, then that will be a problem for the development process. Let's now look at the concerns or challenges. So the first concern is that it places anti-corruption agency at the mercy of government slash competent authorities. So you require you require sanction for prosecuting not just people from joint secretary and above, but all the public officials, including the retired officials. Now, we have seen the example of CBI. In CBI, this clause has been there, and that is the reason why so many people from or so many corrupt politicians or corrupt officials have been shielded by the government, because they have not because government is not giving sanction for prosecuting them. Now that under the new law, the ambit is even increased further. So now just not just joint secretary, but all officials are covered under this. It would mean that all these anti-corruption agencies, they would be dependent on the government of the day for prosecuting any politician. Now suppose CBI frames a case against any BJP minister or probably BJP MP, then do you think that the government would allow the CBI to prosecute that person? It would never give sanction. That has been the whole problem. That is why it was called as caged parrot. CBI was called as a caged parrot by the Supreme Court. So this is experts are saying it is regressive because it will further increase the dependence of these anti-corruption agencies on the government. Next is that it will make it difficult for officials. It will make it difficult to prove officials guilty. No, this means that, see, now that we need to prove or we need to show quid pro quo, which means that we need to prove that the person has taken a bribe or any material benefit from the other person, only then I will be prosecuted. It will be difficult to prove that I have taken bribe. Usually the officials are very smart. They don't take bribe in their office. They take bribes in indirect ways. So therefore, it will be difficult for them, for the investigation agencies, to prove the officials guilty, because ultimately, you judge it from the fact that okay, you have benefited that person. That means that you might have taken some bribe or some benefit from that person. But now you have to completely prove that a monetary transaction has taken place between that person and that person. And this is almost impossible to prove. Only in red-handed cases you can prove, because officials are very smart. They now know the tricks of taking bribe without getting into limelight or without facing the law. Next is approval. So in the earlier case, you required approval you require no approval for investigating any public official. But now even for investigation, you require permission from the higher authorities. This again is regressive. It will protect dishonest officials also. So as in all, conclusion wise, this bill is a good bill, progressive bill, but there are certain flaws, and overall it's a balanced bill. I mean, flaws are there in every bill, but it is overall a balanced bill. So let's move to the second topic, which is Prime Minister Modi's visit to Rwanda and Uganda. He is also visited South Africa for BRICS, which I will cover next week. So Prime Minister has made a historic visit to Rwanda because he has become the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Rwanda. So let's first give you a brief about Rwanda. So those who have seen the movie, I don't remember the name exactly, Hotel Rwanda something, Hotel Rwanda probably. Might be aware of the historic background of Rwanda, but Rwanda faced a very terrible civil war in in early 90s. There were two tribes in Rwanda, Hutus and the Tutsis, and they were like crazy for each other because Hutus believed that Tutsis, when the Belgians were ruling over Rwanda, Tutsis were, the Belgians considered the Tutsis more favorite. Therefore, Hutus, when they got power, they started mass genocide against the Tutsis. 90s, a lot of people got killed, thousands of people got killed, some say lakhs of people got killed. But in the start of this millennium, 2000, after 2000, things got stabilized in Rwanda. Now Rwanda is considered as the fastest growing economy in the world, and Rwanda is also allowing or it's very pro foreign capital and pro foreign investment. That has meant that the eyes of the West and India and China have now opened, and they are thinking that Rwanda is a new, or Rwanda can be a attractive investment destination. So now let's talk about why the visit of Prime Minister is important. Firstly, it's the first ever visit of any PM of India to Rwanda. Secondly, as I've seen that Rwanda has shown massive economic growth. Which means, and Rwanda now boasts of a strong middle class, which means that the Indian products could be very attractive for Rwanda, which means, as you have known that the industrialists or the corporates in India are struggling, Rwanda could be a good market for the Indian corporates. Also, it could be because Rwanda is focusing on its infrastructure development, so Indian companies can provide, or it is a good market for doing investment. Next, we will look into is engagement of India and Rwanda in recent years. So the Rwandan president Kagame has visited India, or he has visited India twice in last 2 years. In 2017, he came to India for the Vibrant Gujarat event, and in 2018, he again came for the founding conference of International Solar Alliance. So there have been increase in high level meetings in last few years. Second is that the ties between India and Rwanda have been elevated to strategic partnership. Now, what do we mean by strategic partnership? So, according to the government of India, they have never defined the word strategic partnership. They have not defined the word strategic partnership. But what the experts say, it means that when two countries elevate the relationship into strategic partnership, it generally means that they also have defense cooperation with each other. They can also have anti-terrorism cooperation with each other. They could have anti-piracy cooperation with each other. Also, Rwanda has received around $400 million as lines of credit in last few years, and many Rwandans have benefited from it. So, what did the Prime Minister do in Rwanda, other than the photo ops, which he is very famous for? Firstly, he gifted two 100 cows to Rwanda. So this is actually a scheme in Rwanda known as Girinaka scheme, in which the government provides one cow to each household so that that family can sustain itself by using that cow. Therefore, this 200 cows will be given under this scheme to households. Second thing which he did was he extended $200 million of credit to Rwanda. So this will be used for developing special economic zones and agriculture infrastructure in Rwanda. Thirdly, he signed MOU. So he signed MOU with respect to leather, dairy, agriculture, and other things also. And fourthly, and this is very important, he announced that Indian embassy will be opened in China in near days, in soon. Sorry, Indian army will open in Rwanda. So in Rwanda we don't have any embassy right now. Next is his visit to Uganda. So in Uganda he did not do anything very conclusive. He addressed the Parliament of Uganda, which the first time any Indian PM did that. He also addressed the Indian diaspora in Uganda. So Uganda is also, it is growing really well, and Uganda had a large population of Indian diaspora in the 70s and the 80s. But then Idi Amin, the eccentric and the madman, he was considered as the madman of the Africa. When he came to power, he thought that it is these Indians, because Indians in Uganda were rich. All the business were in their hands. So he thought that the real cause of misery of Uganda people are these Indians who are actually, who are very exploitative, and they are trying to exploit the local people of Uganda. Therefore, what he ordered was that he said that I give you 24 hours, you have to go out of the Uganda. You just sell your properties and go out of the Uganda. If you don't go, the state will confiscate your property. So then many Indians ran to Zimbabwe, South Africa, some went to England, some went to US, some came back to India, but India said that we already have a lot of burden, so we can't take new people. So this is a brief about Uganda and Indian diaspora relations. Let's move to the next topic, which is actually in next coming weeks I will be doing a proper analysis topic on India and Africa. That is a very important topic which I need to do, and I will do it in the coming weeks. So this topic is also related to this. This is actually an op-ed. That's written by C. Rajmohan, and most of his op-eds are important, so you should always read that. The name of the op-ed was Trailing China. So, as you know, so this op-ed actually talks about how China is, having a significant defense cooperation with African countries, and India is lacking in that. So that is why the heading Trailing China. So it says that recently China had actually organized a fortnightly China-Africa Defense Security Forum in Beijing, in which military leaders of all the 50 countries in Africa attended the meeting, and in which they discussed how China will be able to, or at this forum China announced that China will play a major role in modernization of armed forces in Africa, and it will not just supply them arms and technologies, but also give them strategic and personal advice. So they will be Chinese, or the personals from Chinese army would be posted to these African countries, and the role of these officials would be to advise them how to use that equipments. Now, according to the estimates, China was very laggard 5 years back. But since 2013, China has started focusing. See, the problem was that African countries feel very comfortable in dealing with China. There are 2-3 reasons for that. Firstly, China give them deal at a cheap price, right? So if West will give them some arm in $1 million, China will say, I will give you in $500,000. Second thing is, China does not interfere in the internal affairs of that country. So whether you are communist, capitalist, dictator, anything, China would not, China would ignore it. West has a problem. West sometimes, in those states which are dictator, West has a problem. They always file these suits in the UN against genocide suits and all. So they have a problem with them. So that is why most of the autocratic countries and even the democratic countries, they prefer dealing with China rather than dealing with West. Now China had a really good economic engagement with African countries till 2012 and 13, but it did not have close defense cooperation with African countries. Since 2013, it has changed its strategy, and according to the report, there has been 55% increase in the arms export from China to Africa between 2013 and 2017. So China's strategy in Africa is based on two things. Firstly, being cost effective and cooperative. Which means China does not claim that it is giving Africa very high quality, sophisticated kind of defense equipments. It gives them average equipment which they actually need, because ultimately African countries do not have to fight with the US. They have to fight with each other mostly. So for that they require a average quality or average sophistication kind of arms. And China also focuses on strengthening the internal security of these countries, which means the police. So China has been also focusing on modernization of the police in the African countries. China has also been focusing on what you call as on strengthening the anti-terror network or anti-terror organizations of Africa. So they are training them, they are actually giving them arms through which they can fight against these terrorist groups. Also, China has increased its presence in the peacekeeping missions in Africa in last few years. Second strategy of China is sharing new technologies. So China has been exporting artificial intelligence software, which is actually boosting surveillance capacity of many African states, so they can do a proper surveillance of terrorist activities, etc. And now China has announced that in future it will share more new technologies with Africa. Now, what should India do in this regard? So when during the Indian African Forum Summit, all the African countries looked towards India for increasing defense cooperation, but we did not actually focus much on that because we believe that we are the largest arms importer in the world. How could we support you? So according to this article, India can do something different. So we accept that we don't have enough vacant arms to export to Africa, but we can do a different thing. What we can do is we can have a very good see, having experience of a lot of wars, having experience of defending northern borders, eastern borders. Our army is very trained in anti-terror operations. It's very trained in all of in fighting Naxalites and all. So therefore, according to the writer, India should increase military exercises with these African countries. We can share the best practices with them. So, okay, China is giving them arm, but they also need expertise, they also need strategy, and India is very good in that. So, rather than giving arms, which we know that it's not affordable for us, what we should do is, we should focus on enhancing the military training facilities in the African countries. So, what we can do is that we can call the friendly African armies and we can train them in the IMA, or we can train them in the NDA. Right, that too we can do, na? For that we don't require extra funds. So that is what we can do in order to counter the Chinese increasing defense cooperation with Africa. Let's move to the next bill, which is Trafficking of Persons Bill 2018. So this bill has been passed by the Lok Sabha recently, and before we understand the key components of the bill, let us first understand what is human trafficking. So human trafficking is an action or the practice of illegally transporting person from one country or area to another, typically for the purpose of forced labor or commercial sexual exploitation. This is what we know as trafficking. Now, what is the status of human trafficking in India? So, according to the NCRB data, human trafficking numbers have there have been 8,132 incidences of human trafficking, which has been reported in 2016, and this number is 15% or almost 20% higher than the 2015 number, which means that incidences of human trafficking have increased in India. So, what are the reasons for human trafficking? First reason is economic reason. So we get sex workers from Bangladesh at a very cheap cost. We get labor from Northeast, from Bangladesh, from Nepal at a very cheap cost, because there is so much poverty there that they are willing to work at even a very low cost, and that is why they are an attractive option for the traffickers. Second is social causes. So as you know that all the countries of South Asia have patriarchy, and there is also a lot of poverty among the people. So they believe that some parents believe that girl child is a burden. They will have to get her married, they will have to give dowry. So they believe that it's better to sell her to the trafficker, and that their burden would be reduced by that, and that family would earn something from this deal. So that is also forcing a lot of parents to force their poverty and patriarchy are forcing people to force their girl child for prostitution or for other things. Third is geographical. Now, in some areas of India where sex ratio has been really bad thanks to their own habits, there is a shortage of brides. So, the biggest example of this is Haryana. So, what they do is that they actually traffic. So, these traffickers, what they do, they supply bride to these regions from those areas which have a favorable sex ratio, like Kerala, like Northeast. So, this is also one of the reasons why we have this problem. And fourthly, administrative. This is because there is a lot of corruption involved. BSF is involved in so many cases. Other agencies, they are also involved. They believe that they take bribe and they allow these traffickers to run their business. And lastly, other reasons which include absence of law, absence of any specific law to deal with trafficking, and also that the border with Bangladesh is really porous. So all these things are reasons which are or these are the causes for trafficking in India. Now let's talk of the schemes and initiatives launched by Government of India to tackle human trafficking. The Ministry of Home Affairs have established a dedicated cell and this cell is responsible for preventing human trafficking. So this cell is responsible for providing state government with the necessary research, studies and information. Second step which government does is that Ministry of Child and Women, it organizes workshops for the NGOs who are working in this field, and these workshops tries to enlighten them and try to increase their awareness. Also, Ministry of Women and Child runs what we call as Swadhar Home. These are short homes, or these are homes for women who are in difficult circumstances. So for short stay, women can stay here. And lastly, government has also launched a scheme Ujjwala, which is a scheme focusing on rescue, rehabilitation and reintegration of victims of trafficking for commercial sexual exploitations. Now, why do we need a new law for human trafficking? Let's understand that. Well, first reason is there is no single law in India. So there is no single law dealing with human trafficking per se. So therefore, if there is any crime related to human trafficking, 6 to 7 ministries are involved in this, because some portion of the crime is related to this ministry, some with that ministry, and that makes the trial and the investigation process very cumbersome. Second is that trafficking or there are some weaknesses in the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, ITPA, 1956. So there is an act dealing with prostitution, which is Immoral Trafficking of Persons Act 1956. But the problem with this act is that it considers human trafficking only, the cases of prostitution. So it is not wide in its coverage. It only includes, women who are forced to engage in prostitution, and it has a very paternalistic kind of view, or very, what do you call as moralistic kind of view towards this profession. And the name itself is a very misnomer, immoral. So that's why we need a new law which reflects the realities of the 21st century and which is wide in its coverage. I mean, human trafficking is not just prostitution. It covers many other areas which we have discussed. Now let's talk of the highlight of the bills. First key feature is that it has a wider coverage, or it has a wider definition for the term human trafficking. So human trafficking would not just include prostitution. According to the new law, it includes it includes trafficking for the purpose of forced labor, begging, trafficking of the woman or child for the purpose of marriage or under the pretext of marriage, or after marriage, trafficking by administering chemical substances or hormones. All are considered as human trafficking, and all of them will be punished under the law. Second thing it deals with is that it increases the punishment for trafficking. So any person who is involved in trafficking would get jailed for minimum 10 years to life, and will have a fine for at least 1 lakh rupees. Also, in order to break the organized nexus both at the national and international level, it mandates for attachment and forfeiture of property and also proceeds of crime. Also, third punishment is that if you publish any material, or if you print or publish any material which directly or indirectly promotes human trafficking, in that case also you will get jail of 3 years and your website will be banned. Third thing which this thing deals with is that there will be confidentiality of victim and witness. So their identities will be kept confidential, and it will be maintained by recording their statements through video conferencing. Next is trial and repatriation. So when we talk of trial and repatriation, it says that the trial will be finished within 1 year from taking into cognizance the crime, and also immediately after the victim will be rescued, he will be given some interim relief for the first 30 days to address her psychological, mental and other kinds of trauma, and further appropriate relief would be given 60 days from the date of filing of charge sheet. Next is rehabilitation fund. So rehabilitation fund would be created under this act, and this will be used for physical, psychological, social and economic well-being of the victim, which means that it will be used for making her educated, for her health care, for psychological support, for developing her skills, so that she will leave the job and she will reintegrate into the society. Next is institutional mechanisms. So there will be a dedicated institutional mechanisms to fight trafficking, and it will be established in district, state and central level, and they will be responsible for prevention, protection, investigation and rehabilitation work related to trafficking. At the central level, there will be new body which will be established, which will be called as Anti-Trafficking Bureau. And the role of this Anti-Trafficking Bureau would be to control and tackle the menace of trafficking. So it will do the function of coordination, monitoring and surveillance of illegal movements of persons and prevention. Let's talk of the significance of the bill. First significance is that it recognizes that human trafficking is not just about prostitution. So it gives wider definition about trafficking. Secondly, it's the first law or first dedicated law on anti-trafficking, and thirdly, it will make India a leader among South Asian countries to combat trafficking, because no other South Asian country has a dedicated law for trafficking. So therefore, it will motivate our neighbors to frame a dedicated anti-trafficking law. Let's move to the criticism part. So first criticism of this is that there has been a drafting error in this law. The experts believe that section 36 of this act, of this bill, says that any propaganda material that promotes trafficking of person or exploitation of trafficked person in any manner he will be punished by 3 years of jail. But problem is that the bill does not define what constitutes promotion. What constitutes promotion, it does not define, which means that any porn website or any website which has erotic content, they could be banned by the government, and the owner could be arrested by the person by the government, which means that it could create a censorship problem. I mean, already you know that government has been repeatedly banning a lot of sites in last few years, and with this clause, it's giving a wide power to the government. It is also keeping this clause very vague. And as you know, any vague sentence leads to discretion. It leads to discretion, it leads to misuse. That has been the experience of India from last 70 years. So therefore, this vague clause will be misused, experts believe it will be misused to enhance the censorship in the country, and even the political opponents could be targeted for that. So if there are 2-3 articles on erotica or something like that, that site would be banned, that site is promoting trafficking related content, and it will be banned and that person would be arrested. So this experts believe is a major problem. They believe this problem needs to be solved. Next is there are multiplicity of institutes in this bill. I mean, this bill has created problem of multiplicity of institutes. So already we have integrated child protection scheme has already established institutions at district, block and central level, and their role is to protect the child, and protection includes not just physical violence but also it deals with childs which are trafficked. Now this bill is silent on this, that whether after the establishment of National Anti-Trafficking Bureau and other related bodies at the district, state and central level, will these child protection committees, will they work or will they get vanished? If they work, then it will create a coordination problem and it will create a parallel institution according to some experts, because then there will be confusion. That there will be confusion of jurisdiction. These bodies will say that all crimes, including trafficking related crimes dealing with children, they are within our ambit. The trafficking body will say that all trafficking crimes, including the crimes of or including the trafficking of the children, it is in our jurisdiction, and that will create problem for the law enforcement agency. And it will also create a problem of child victim being, passed from one authority to another. Third issue with this bill is that the consent of victim is disregarded. Now, in this case, in this bill, like the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, suppose I work as a prostitute and I have been caught by the law investigating agency, and it has been found that I have been not doing by my will, I have been trafficked from probably Nepal or Bangladesh. Now, I will have to be forced under the act, I will have to forcefully go to this rehabilitation center, I will have to forcefully go to this rescued homes, and I will be forcefully do what the government will tell me. So my consent is disregarded. If I don't want to go to these rescue homes, if I say that now that you have rescued me, allow me to go back to my home, allow me to do some other work, that has not been, there has been no autonomy in this bill. The state assumes the role of a paternal, kind of a body, and it decides for that person what is good or what is bad for her. She has not been given any choice what she wants to do. And the conditions in these rescue homes are so pathetic that rather than rehabilitating or rather than improving, they become more mentally sick when they stay in this rescue home for 3 months or 6 months. Right? Next is illegal organ trade is also ignored. So illegal organ trade is also one of the crimes under human trafficking that is not being covered within the ambit of the law. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion which experts say that okay, this bill is fine, no problem, we need a bill, but we have to address the root cause of trafficking, which is porous borders with Bangladesh, which is poverty in some parts of India. And unless and until these root causes are not addressed, this law will be only effective mildly. It will not end the human trafficking problem. So this ends the fourth issue of the week. Let's move to the fifth topic, which is Section 377 debate. So a 5-judge bench of Supreme Court has recently just concluded its hearing, and now it will come up with a verdict in next few weeks. So that is why this section was in news. And Section 377 is technically, in simple words, it's the anti-homosexual law in India. So what are the origins of this law? So this this section was introduced in 1860 by Lord Macaulay. And see, during that time, people think that England was like very modern, like 150 years ago. It was not like that. In 19th century, the society in England was also very conservative in a way. And at that time, and the church domination was much. It was high. So therefore, they believed that this homosexuality is against the law of the nature and against the what you call as Victorian morality, and therefore it should be punished. So therefore this section was introduced, and it said that if any person or whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of the nature with any man, woman or animal shall be punished with imprisonment for life or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years, and he or she shall also be liable to fine. Which means that if any man does an intercourse with another woman or animal or does unnatural sex with other women, he could be jailed for 10 years. That is what this section used to say. Now, after the NAS Foundation, so NAS Foundation is an NGO working for homosexuality and transgenders, it filed a case in High Court, and the High Court gave a verdict in favor of scrapping Section 377. Now, this is given to a debate, and this debate is still there, that whether or should Section 377 be scrapped or not. So, what are the reasons in favor of 377? Well, if this kind of question comes in your exam, you may take only one-sided view. I mean, it is on you to mention the arguments in favor. It is up to you if you don't want to mention. Because ultimately there are some things which cannot be defended. And this thing is one of that. I mean, there cannot be a balanced view on that. This is an discriminatory law, and it has no place in a civilized society. I mean, you don't have to be politically correct in this law, right? So you can take a position against this law from the outset. You don't have to, and there is also option for you that you can first say reasons in favor and then you go against the thing. But your conclusion should always be pro, or it should always be anti Section 377. That is my advice. You can mention anything in your answer, but your conclusion should be anti Section 377(3). Because ultimately we expect that the people who are checking your copy, they are that much liberal in their outlook. Right? That is what we expect. So for the sake of mentioning, I'll mention the reasons in favor of Section 377. First is that it has been criticized because it is against the laws of the nature. I mean, homosexuality is against the law of the nature. So if everybody will become homosexual, how will be the next generation will come, right? So for running next generation, you need people who are, or you need people, or you need intercourse between men and women. Second argument is that it is against the law, it is against the morals of society and religion. So all the major religions in the world, including Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, they are not very supportive of homosexuality. So people, or the what you call it, those so-called thekedars of religions, say that India being a religious country, we should not allow this thing because people take their religion very seriously. Therefore, if this section will be scrapped, it would hurt their religious feelings. This is one thing which unites all of them, all of the pundits, the priests and the Maulvis. Otherwise, you can always see the fighting on these national TV shows. Also, people say that homosexuals are more prone to AIDS, and this law will, if it scraps section 7, it will promote homosexuality, which could promote HIV/AIDS in India. Now, let me tell what are the arguments against section 377. So argument against is that it violates right to life, it violates right to privacy, it violates right of choice. I mean, it violates Article 19, Article 21. Also, this section has been used or misused by the law enforcing agencies to harass the homosexual or transgender people, and also to harass the sex workers. So usually, the police, using this law, they take bribe from these group of people. Thirdly, under this section, any person can be arrested on the basis of suspicion, like any two males who are holding hands. Even they can be first arrested by the law, and then they have to prove that they are not guilty. So this is kind of a draconian law. Also, international development. So Britain, from which this law was introduced in India, has abolished this law. Nepal has abolished this law, right? I mean, even Nepal can, with this law, we are, some countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, they have not, they kind of criminalize homosexuality. We, being the largest democracy in the world, we are in league of these regressive countries. But this is really bad. Now let's talk about the judicial decrees on section 377. So in 2009, in Nas Foundation versus the Union of India, the High Court gave a verdict, landmark verdict. It scrapped the section 377 calling it appalling and calling it, discriminatory. And it found that it is inconsistent with the Article 13 of the Constitution. It also found it violating right to privacy and dignity, freedom of expression, right to equality, and Article 14 and 15. But later, what happened was that the case was again filed in the Supreme Court by the people who lost, and Supreme Court gave the verdict in 2013 that, and it reversed the verdict of High Court. It kind of said that 377 is continued to stay because it said that it's legally unsustainable to scrap 377. So now most of the comments which this recent panel of Supreme Court is giving has raised the hope of the LGBT activists, because they believe that by the comments which they are saying, it is very highly likely that Supreme Court will reverse the earlier judgment of Supreme Court, and it will continue, or it will re-establish the Delhi High Court judgment. And many people say that now that right to privacy judgment has come, so in that direction it is very likely, because this is also part of right to privacy. Whatever I am doing inside my room, it's my own job, right? So with right to privacy judgment, it is very, very likely that now Supreme Court will reverse the earlier judgment of Supreme Court. Next issue is an op-ed on live print, which is very, very important, I felt. Name of the op-ed is Two Engines of the Economy. So see, this op-ed talks about investment in India, the GFCF, the gross fixed capital formation. It talks about why investment in India is falling, and it ends it with with what are the possibilities of revival of investment in near term. So first of all, let us understand what is investment, or what is gross fixed capital formation. So investment, in simple terms, it is net addition to capital stock, which means, suppose we have a factory has 10 machines, and the factory manufacturers, let's say bottle, let's say cola. Now next year the factory purchases 5 more machines. Now this 5 more machines is addition to the capital stock. There were 10 machines last year, now there are 5 machines. So this 5 increase in 5 can be called as the investment done by the factory, right? So investment could be of 3 types. One is private corporate investment, which is the example which I've given. Second is household investment. So we are households. If we buy a house, then we are doing investment. If we are buying shares, we are doing an investment. Third is government. So government investment would mean building roads, building dams, all these things could be considered as government investment. Even Manrega is kind of a government investment. So this is what we call as investment. Now, why is investment important for an economy? Why are economists so concerned about investment? So first reason is that it increases the capacity to produce, or it increases the supply side capacity of the economy. So Suppose, as we have given the last example, there were 10 machines. Now 10 machine would produce probably 1 lakh cola. If 5 machines would be added, it would produce probably 1.5 lakhs cola. So with increase in capital stock would increase the capacity of the economy to produce more. And when the capacity of the economy will be produced, or it will be increased to produce more, it will lead to economic growth. Second thing is that it creates more job in the economy. Now, this is why. Because as if you will buy 5 more machines, you will need labor to run those machines. You will require the labor to operate that machines. Right? So as and when you expand, you require more labor. Everything cannot be automized. And also, when you create this labor, when you create this extra employment, these extra labor will also demand something. Right? If he is working in a cola factory, he is getting the salary. With that salary, he will have demand of clothes also. He will have demand of other things also, and that will give boost to other industries in the economy. So it's a kind of a correlated cycle where if you will create employment in some sector, that will create demand for other sectors. I mean, that labor will have to purchase these things, na? So the demand for these things will also increase, right? Thirdly, it would increase, or it will boost the companies or country's competitiveness. And therefore trade balance. So when you increase more, when you use more capital, your production cost will decrease. And your production cost will decrease, it will make your goods competitive to the rest of the world, which will give boost to your exports and ultimately lead to trade balance. And fourthly, it will decrease fiscal deficit in the economy. Now, this will happen why? Because as the investment in the economy would increase, it would mean that the profits of the corporates would increase. Because without new investment, your profits cannot increase. And when profits of corporates will increase, then the tax they will pay to the government will also increase. And when the government will get more tax revenue, then it will ultimately reduce the fiscal deficit. So, let's now talk about what this op-ed is talking about. So, since 2013, so 2010 to 2013, India's investment rate was around 33% on an average. Between 2013 to 2016, it fell to 30%. And that is the reason why we are having a slowdown in economic growth, and that is the reason why we are not creating enough jobs, because the investment has been falling. It has at a decade low, and the reasons why investment is falling is because of two things. Firstly, the private corporate investment has declined. And second thing is that the household investments have also declined. It has declined from 45% to 31%. It's a major decline. This is the reason why the investment rate is declining. Now, why has the private corporate investment declined? So there are a number of factors because of that. First factor is that because of twin balance sheet problem. So the corporates are over leveraged. They have taken loan 5 years back, 7 years back, 9 years back. Now they said, since their business is not working very well and since a lot of their projects have stuck thanks to land acquisition, environment and other things or the Supreme Court judgment, they don't have appetite to do further investment. They believe that their job should be to first, smoothen their balance sheet. So that is why any earning which they are getting, they are saving that earning. They are not further investing that earning or profit, because they believe that earning should be used to improve their balance sheet, which has gone bad because of them taking so much loans during the boom years. So first reason is over leveraged corporates. Also, these people have become risk averse now. They believe that, because of the past experiences, they are believing that again if their loans or again if their investment will go fail, they will be doomed. So therefore, now they have what Manthan said during the last years, that they require the animal spirits, which is they require the ability to, face or take risky and tough decisions. Second reason why it is declining is because of, again, the twin balance sheet problem, because of banks not willing to lend. So because banks are facing the NPA problem, so they have also become more risk averse now. They are not giving, and also thanks to these Malias and these Mehul Choksis and these Modis, Nirav Modis, they have even gone more risk averse before, because they believe that if they give big loan, again they will face problem or that guy will run away. So they are also not willing to give loan. Third reason is because of GST. Now GST has kind of disturbed the whole supply chain. So the investments are, the companies are not, it's a kind of a transitory shock which the economists say. This is also the reason behind that. Fourthly, demonetization. Demonetization is actually, I would consider demonetization as probably the biggest blunder of last 30 to 40 years, because it has affected every sector. It has affected corporate, it has affected farmers, it has affected small scale businesses, everywhere it has affected. It has affected jobs. So that is actually also the reason why investment has been falling. And lastly, there is political uncertainty now. Because it's an election year next year. Many corporates are thinking that if they do investment and if the regime changes and an unfriendly regime comes to power, their investment would go bad. So therefore they are taking the task of waiting and watch. They are doing the task of waiting and watch. Now, so next is what this article is discussing, that since last 1 year, so it said that government has actually taken number of steps in last few years to revive investment. And these include, firstly, government has increased what you call as government investment. So it is building roads, it has increased the funding for Manrega, more and more toilets are being built, more and more roads are being built, and these create what you call as indirect demand. So this is also, see, when we discuss this concept of crowding in effect, so crowding in effect means that if, I have discussed it in the earlier lecture also, crowding in effect means that when government invests on roads, electricity, etc., or warehouses, which makes business or which makes conduct of business simpler for the private sector, then it crowds in the private investment. So if there will be 24/7 electricity, if there will be good roads, if there will be proper warehouses, all these things will crowd in private investment, because it will make private investment more attractive. Because private people will feel now they will not have to use their own electricity. Now the roads are good, so they can transport their goods from factory to the market very, very easily. So all these things crowd in investment, crowd in the private investment. So now that government investment has focused on improving roads, electricity, etc., the author of this article believes that with this it will crowd in the private investment in next few years. Second steps taken by government is that it has started with this single window clearance in many things. So this ease of doing business which government has, or the steps government has taken in last few years, this will also make investment, or this will also boost investment in the coming years. Third thing which the government did is that government has taken number of steps like IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, GST, which in short term has affected investment, but in long term it will boost investment. All these things will also give boost to investment in coming years. Secondly, government has reduced or increased the FDI limits, simplified the FDI limits. It has scrapped the FIPB. All these things will again help the private, or it will help the private investment in the future. But in conclusion, the author says that yes, government has taken these decisions and it will show its result in next 3-4 years, but in short run it will have no effect, because it's an election year and the investments will be willing to wait and watch. So, and plus, because they are over leveraged, till their balance sheet would not improve, it will not reflect in results. So government has taken steps in right direction, and the author is optimistic that in long run it will start to show results, but we cannot expect results in the short run. Next is also an op-ed, which is why private hospitals should join AB-NHPM. Now, ABHPM, as you know, is the Ayushman scheme, under which around 10 crore families would be covered with an insurance of 5 lakhs per family. And we had discussed in the previous lectures also that the private hospitals, they are not willing, or the good private hospitals, they are not willing to join the Ayushman program, because they believe the kind of rates which they will be given as a compensation is very, very low. The rate fixed for all the surgeries is very, very low, and since it's very, very low, they are not interested in joining this program. Now, many experts have believed that if these good hospitals will not join the program, it will create the problem of mediocrity. I mean, poor people will then have to go to these small nursing homes in cases of, in any of the cases. So this they believed would defeat the purpose of this Ayushman scheme, because the health facilities would not improve. So in this op-ed, the author is actually, it is suggesting that why it is in the interest of private hospitals and also in the interest of India or in the interest of scheme if these private hospitals join the Ayushman scheme. So first thing which the author says is that the rates which have been decided, it's not like the final word, because under the scheme the center has given flexibility to the states to reverse. So this DRG based model is more rational and more scientific because it is based on complete analysis that these diseases are same kind of, it is same level of complexity. So for this disease the amount which will be compensated to the hospital will be that much. So this Ayushman scheme will move to the DRG, diagnosis related group model, in next few months, and that will make the compensation process more rational. Also the writer of this article says that the hospital should consider the following issues. First issue which they should consider is that they should understand that the nationally prescribed rates are not intended to cover the cost of the capital and infrastructure in the short run, but only the marginal cost, which means that the hospital should understand that the prices or the see, they have to maintain their infrastructure, they have to pay for the cost of capital or the loan which they have taken for building the hospital. All these things are also there, right? They are called what you call as fixed capital. The author is saying that the hospitals should understand that the national rates which are being prescribed, they only cover the marginal cost, and because it's a thing of dealing with poor, they should not think that they will get the compensation for the building cost or for the cost of capital also. They should accept the fact that what they are getting is for the marginal cost. So every kind of patient which they are treating, they are not losing out in that. They are not losing out in that, right? And what the aim of this program is that no bed in India hospital should be kept vacant. Every bed in every hospital should be filled with a patient, and for that you require involvement of these big private hospitals, because in these big private hospitals during the off season would mean that the seasons when you don't have all these dengues and malarias, a large amount of beds in these hospitals are kept vacant. So the aim of the government is that, see, it should not be kept as vacant. We want you to treat the patient. We will give you the cost of what you will bear in treating that patient, but that will only cover the marginal cost. That means per patient cost. You will not face any loss. We will cover all the kind of cost which you will bear for the patient. That is what the idea behind this scheme is that. So therefore hospitals should realize that they will only receive marginal costs while treating these people. Second is that hospitals, especially the big ones, should have responsibility. So see, these hospitals charge exorbitant prices from the rich people, and nobody is telling them not to charge. But the idea is that in everywhere in the world, generally the rich finances the health thing of the poor. So these big hospitals should have responsibility that they should not think that they should scrap, or they should not treat poor as a profit making object. For that they have lot of rich patients to go there, so they can treat them and they can earn the money. For the poor patient, their focus should be on that they should not get any profit and they should not get any loss. And that is what government is providing. Government's rates are based on that thing, that you will not earn any profit, but you will also not kind of face any loss. So therefore, big hospitals should have responsibility that okay, we are earning from the rich people, now we will treat them for no profit, no loss. Also, AB or the scheme wants a partnership with all quality hospitals so that the evaluation of scheme benefits from diverse inputs. So they should think that the big hospitals should think that if they will join the scheme, they will be able to advise the government on running the scheme. They will give them inputs. These hospitals will give them inputs that these are the flaws in the scheme and you should do these things to improve the functioning or implementation of the scheme. So therefore, these three things hospitals should consider. They should consider this fact that this is a landmark scheme, remarkable scheme, and they should be foot soldiers in ensuring that the scheme is implemented on ground. Because this scheme has the potential of significantly improving health outcomes in India and reducing the cost for the patients. Therefore, big hospitals should ensure that they earn their money from the rich people and they subsidize or they treat the poor people at the no profit, no cost way. Let's move to the next issue, which is inter-creditors agreement. Now, this inter-creditor agreement has been recently signed between public sector banks, foreign banks, and the private sector banks. So, this is part of the Shashakt program which the government has launched to solve the NPA problem. And in this Shashakt program, it has a three-way of clause. First is less than 50 crores, which the individual bank will treat himself if the loan is less than 50 crores. If it's between 50 to 500 crores, then the creditor agreement would be formed. And if it's more than 500 crores, then ARC will be established to manage the loan. So according to that Sasaki plan, the loans between 50 to 500 crores, inter-creditor agreements will be signed between the banks. See, let's understand this in a very simple way. When you give a loan, these big loans, these 100, 200, 300 crores loans, not one bank is involved in that. So if suppose the loan is 400 crores, X has taken a loan of 400 crores. Now, in most cases, he has not taken these 400 crores from a single bank. He probably would have taken that from 10 different banks. From some few amount, 5 crores, 6 crores, from some 50 crores, 70 crores, or even 100 crores. Now, when this person becomes bankrupt, then all these creditors, they fight between them on what should be done with the loan, because when you give loan, you also attach some properties, you give some collateral. So how to get their money back? These banks fight with each other, and this leads to problem. This leads to the problem because since this loan since they have not recovered the loan, the capacity of these banks to give further loans also decreases, because they have not realized the loss that they have beared in this loan which they have given. So only when this will be settled, only then they can give further loans. So this has been the problem in India. So what will an inter-creditor agreement do? Let's understand this. So intercreditor agreement, what it will do is that these banks will sign an agreement with each other. By signing the agreement, they would mean that they have implemented or they have accepted the terms and conditions of this agreement. And under this, what will happen? Suppose there is a loan of 400 crores, and there are 10 banks. Or there are 100 banks which have given the loan. Now, after this intercreditor agreement would come into picture, the person or the bank with the largest exposure, which means if suppose bank X has given 50 crores loan, and this is the highest loan which among all the banks which have given loan, this is the highest amount which have been given. Now this bank X would become the leader. He would become the leader. He would make a plan. He would make a resolution plan that I am making a plan that this how how we will get back our 400 crores. Here's my plan. Now that plan has to be accepted by 66% of loan amount, which means if the amount is 400 crores, then at least the people who have given loan, at least 260 crore worth is being accepted. So some banks will have very high loan. Suppose there are 50 lenders, right? And out of those 50 lenders, 6 or 7 lenders are very big. They have exposure of 50 crore each, and rest of the next 15 or next 20 banks have given a very small amount of loan. So suppose these 6-7 big banks, their total loan exposure is 66% of the total amount which the person has to repay. So if in this case it's 400 crores, if 6 or 7 banks total amount is equivalent to 260 crores, then they will take the decision on the behalf of these small banks also. So if 66% of the total loan amount people, if they agree on the plan which is formulated by the leader, and who is the leader? Leader is the person who has the maximum exposure, who has given the maximum loan or maximum amount of loan to that person. So even those people, those small lenders, they will have to accept this plan, even if they don't agree with it, right? If they don't accept the plan, they will be given 2 options. The people who have not accepted the plan, the minority loan givers, they would be given 2 options. First option would be that they can sell their exposure to another lender at a 15% discount, which means that suppose the rest 34%, they said, oh, we don't like this agreement, we don't like it. So what they can do is that, and suppose their total exposure is 140 crores. Now what they can do is that at 15% discount, which would mean that they would get paid around 120 crores, they can sell their exposure to any of these banks which are part of this 66%. They can, but they will have to sell it in discount, so they will have to face some loss. So if their loan amount which was 140 crores, they will only get paid 120 crores. First option is that. Second option is that they buy the entire exposure of the banks at a 25% premium, which means the total exposure of the 66% is 260 crores. And we will add 25% in that, which would make it like around 340 crores. So these banks will have the option to pay 340 crores to these 66% people and then decide how it will formulate a plan. Then it will become the leader again. So this is how it will work. If you have any confusion regarding that, please you can ask me. You can call me, you can ping me on Telegram, because these are complex things. Some people don't understand this, but I will try to make it. I have tried to make it very, very simpler. So main idea behind this inter-creditor agreement is that to resolve the problem smoothly. The problem till now has been that, these small lenders, it's very difficult to have a unanimous unity among all the lenders. I mean, bank X will have a different plan, bank Y will have a different plan, bank Z will have a different plan, and that means that the amount is stuck for years and nothing has been made, or nothing has been made in that 400 career. It means that the banks get nothing, and that is why they don't even lend further. So in order to smoothen the process, in order to get the things done, this inter-creditor agreement has been introduced. Now, what is the possible fallout? First issue is that the leader, the person who has the maximum exposure, he will have to resolve the process, or he have to make a plan, and he will have to implement that plan in a time bound process, which means that suppose he has to make a plan and implement the plan within 6 months. Now, it's not very easy to find the buyers. So what it will do is that before the expiry of this last date, it will make a plan, or it will sell the assets at whatever price somebody is offering, because he knows that he has to formulate and implement the plan within that time period. So what these buyers do is that they wait till the end of this period, and just before the period expires, they then started bidding the amount. That I will buy this collateral amount which the banker person has given in this much money. I will buy in that much money, and that makes the process problematic. That will make the process problematic, and that will mean that the banks will get very little amount of what they have given as loan, because of the distress sales. Second issue is that it is not easy to buy, or it is not easy to get the buyers. That we have seen in the last lecture also. I gave you example of Ambi Valley. I gave you example of even the Goa house of Malia. It's not. I mean, buyers hardly show interest in these disputed properties. So that is also a big task. You have to make sure that the buyers buy the auctioned assets. Until these things are not worked out, experts believe that this inter-creditor agreement would not be it would not significantly improve the situation. Right? So it said that we have to do work on two things. First, we should end this time period thing, because time period thing leads to distress sales, which hurt the interest of the lenders. So therefore this time limitation should be ended. Let's give him proper time to formulate and implement the plan. And second, it is also government has to ensure that the buyers buy the auctioned amount. If they don't buy, then there will be a problem. And the other thing is that the banks actually don't sell the property at a very discounted value. because especially the public sector banks, they feel that if they sell the property at a very discounted value, there will be vigilance against them. So therefore, they only sell the property at price which is market price or a little bit less than that. But the buyers don't buy. The buyers are not interested in that price, and that creates the problem. Because the demand of the banks is high, the buyers are only willing to go, or only willing to give that much. So this is a problem which the government has to find solutions for, and if they can find solutions for that, then only it can improve the situation. So this ends the 8th issue of the week. Let's move to the 9th issue of the week, which is Draft Personal Data Protection Bill 2018. Now, as you know that Aadhaar bill has been introduced, and government said in the court that we will enact a strong data privacy law which will ensure that the data is never misused. So they actually gave Justice B. N. Shri Krishna, who is actually the favorite of every government, to enact a draft data privacy law. And after he will enact the draft data privacy law, it will be circulated for public consultation, and in future, after public consultation, the parliament will pass the law at the earliest. So Sri Krishna Commission has recently came out with their draft protection or draft personal data protection bill, and the bill has following provisions. Firstly, it creates Data Protection Authority of India. So this Data Protection Authority of India will be an independent regulatory body responsible for enforcement and effective implementation of the law, and it will consist of chairperson and 6 full-time members. Also, if you don't agree with the judgment of this authority, the person will have the right to appeal the case in the higher court. Second thing which this bill brings out is that it says that there is consent, there will be consent required for processing of personal data. So when you process any personal data, you have to inform that person that we are taking your personal data and we will be using your data for that purpose, and that consent should be it should be clear, specific, and also it should be capable of being withdrawn. So if today I give my consent and you use my private data, tomorrow I feel that it's not safe, so I can always withdraw my consent that please don't use my personal data. And when I withdraw my consent, then you will have to you will be not be allowed to use my data. So this is also and also it said that in case of sensitive personal data, the consent would be explicit, which means that it's mandatory, you will have to take the consent of the user. Next provision of this will be that there will be a clause of right to be forgotten. No, right to be forgotten means that suppose suppose there is a girl, and girl is a victim of revenge porn. So maybe 6 7 years back, her boyfriend has leaked her MMS in the internet. Now, after 6 7 years, that girl is living, or it is living a very respectful life. She has been become a respected person. And then if she tells the data protection authority that please remove all the links, all the news related to that scandal from the Google, because now I don't want people to remember that, because I am living a very respectful life. I don't want to be stigmatized all my life. So based on that, data protection authority can remove all the links, all the news related to that person from the Google, and that is what we call is right to be forgotten. That person is now forgotten. That person is now forgotten. You cannot Google about him, about that news in the Google. So this bill talks about right to be forgotten, and it says that data protection authority would determine the eligibility of application, because it will receive application from the people that please forget my, or please I want to remove all my history from the Google, and the authority will decide on the case to case basis based on 5 criteria. First criteria would be sensitivity of the personal data sought to be restricted, scale of disclosure sought to be restricted, role of the data in public life, relevance of personal data to the public, and fifthly, nature of disclosure. Based on these 5 criteria, it will decide that whether it will implement right to be forgotten or not. Next is penalty provisions. So next is the penalty provision. It says that those organizations which do not, or those companies which fail to take prompt and appropriate action in response to any data security breach, they will be penalized, and this penalty would include 5 crores or 2% of their turnover. Which one is higher? So which one is higher? It would include that. And if the or where the norms on personal data are on the children are violated, this penalty would increase to 15 crores or 4% of the total worldwide turnover. Now let's look with some of the issues with this bill. There are certain issues with the bill. First issue is the issue of deletion, which says that in the bill there is or the right to be forgotten is only vaguely articulated. It's not clear cut. You have 5 criteria, but what is there inside the 5 criteria? There is no example given of that. So this could lead to a misuse. How it could lead to misuse? Well, it could lead to a situation where, suppose I had a very bad history, bad political history. I had murdered, I had these things. Tomorrow I became the home minister of this country. I tell the authority that, see, now I don't want people to know about my past, so please delete all the information on the Google with respect to my past criminal history. Now this would be unfair in a democracy. In a democracy, the electorates have the right to know about your past. It has the right. It is part of the informed decision making. So this could be misused by what you call as criminal politicians to delete the past criminal history of that person. Next is transparency. There is the issue of transparency. So it says that Data Protection Authority would have the powers to decide that if data breaches are to be disclosed at all to the affected person or not. So in the earlier bill, which was thought, it would say that in every data breach, the person whose data has been breached will be informed that your data has been breached. But in the new bill, it is on the discretionary power of the Data Protection Authority to disclose whether the bill has been breached or not. But that is also a problem. Thirdly, state snooping. So the bill, or no attempt has been made in the bill to curb government surveillance and their push for data localization. So, I mean, the biggest worry people have is that government using the data to snoop or to create a surveillance state, but that has not been, or any safeguards have not been given in the law to protect from that safeguard. Let's move to the next issue, which is again an op-ed, and this is important for your next year mains, because next year may, or this year also it is important if they can come. See, 1900, this Government of India Act 1998, or what we call as Montagu-Chelmsford report. The report was presented in 1918. So it's the 100th anniversary of the finalization of Montagu-Chelmsford Record, and therefore, and there was this article on Hindu lead about 100 years of this article, or 100 years of this report, and how they considered this report, or not they, I mean the author of this op-ed considered this report as the Magna Carta of India. So India's Magna Carta. Magna Carta is what? Magna Carta is actually a document which was formulated in the 13th century in England, and that decided, that ended the exclusive and absolute power of the king. You know, this act said that now the king will have a limited power. Now he will have to face the constitution. So it's the first, or what we call as the basis of the British Constitution. You know, it defined the powers of the king. That is just landmark thing which happened, because in 13th century, in the Oriental East, the word of the king was absolute. And the king said that you hang that person, he was hanged. So this was kind of a Magna Carta for India, because, you know, so that will, and that is really remarkable, because at that time everywhere in the East, people were, I mean, we had these Oriental despots who rule of law, despots were like things apart. At that period in England, you had this piece of document which talked about limitation on the powers of king, on kings have to follow some rules. This is really remarkable. So this, according to the authors, they say that this Montagu-Chelmsford reform is India's Magna Carta. So MC reforms, if you know, it created what? It created diarchy and province, which would mean that in states there will be some subjects which will be reserved subject, and there will be some subjects which will be transferred subjects. In case of transferred subjects, it will be the Indian minister who will be in charge of that, and in terms of the reserved subject, it will be the governor of that province who will run the administration along with the bureaucrats. So this was one of the main things. Second thing is that it gave provincial autonomy. So it clearly defined that these are the subjects which are given to the center, these are the subjects which are given to the provinces, And in subjects which are not allocated to anyone, it is the center which will have the say. Also, third feature of this MC reforms is that it had the principle of accountable governance. So it talked about accountable governance. It said that the government of India is responsible to the Parliament of the Britain. So it provided for accountable governance in India. So, what was the outcome of this report? Well, Congress did not like it because of other things which the British did. Rowlatt attacked Jallianwala Bagh. So Congress rejected it, Jinnah rejected it, and ultimately Congress did not fight the elections which took place in 1921. But according to the experts, these things which it has given are revolutionary, and they form the basis for the 1935 Act and the final constitution. I mean, these acts further improved on the 1919 Act, and that is why they consider this act to be the Magna Carta of India. So it's a debatable issue. If a question is asked on that, you can take both the sides. There is no problem in that. You can claim that it could be a Magna Carta. You can also defend it is not a Magna Carta, because hardly any responsible government was given to Indians. So it's a very important topic. So that is why I've covered it here. Anything which is 100 years, 500 years, they simultaneously they become important for your exam perspective. Let's put it on the last means issue of the day for me. Rest Rakesh will take. Should we have Sharia courts in India? This is again a topic of debate. So I take these debatable topics because they are ultimately, UPSC loves to ask the debates. They love to ask questions in the form of debate. So recently, All India Muslim Personal Law Board, it has decided that they will establish a Sharia code in every district of the country, and that has sparked a debate about whether we should have a parallel or Sharia courts in a secular country like India. So as you know that now these news channels, who are known to be very close to the government, they bring these very illiterate kinds of mullahs. You can see from their face that they don't know anything about religion or anything else, and then they shout with each other. Now they've even started beating other people. The idea of these media houses is to divert the attention of the common people from the emerging or the burning issues of the day: jobs, agriculture, all these things. That is why they feel it's good to do Hindu-Muslim, and that will divert the attention of the people. And that is why they bring these what I call as Jahil mullahs into the studio room, and then these mullahs, with the payment which they do all kinds of, they say all kinds of nonsense, they do all kinds of nonsense. So with this thing, this issue gave a lot of fodder to these news channels, and they started bringing all these mullahs to the showrooms. So let's give you the background of the Sharia courts in India. So the Sharia courts were established in the second decade of the 20th century in India, and in Bihar more than 60,000 cases have been resolved by these courts. These courts have been established also in West Bengal and Orissa, and they are also women-run Sharia courts in different parts of India. Maharashtra has highest number of such courts. Legally, when we say Sharia courts have no legal backing, so that is the stand of Indian law on Sharia court. And also these Sharia courts, they do not deal with criminal offences. They only deal with civil related matters. So like Kha Panchayat deals with criminal offences, that I tell him to do that, I tell him to do that. But in case of Sharia court, they only give advice on personal matters, not in the criminal matters. So first thing is why Sharia court should be allowed. First reason is that it is an accessible and inexpensive option. Well, as you know, it's not easy to fight cases in the court. It takes years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and plus you need to pay the lawyer the fees. And as you know, that the situation of Muslim community in India economically is not good. All the structure commission, everybody has showed that economically they are as poor as the Dalits and the tribals. So these Sharia courts provide them an accessible and inexpensive option. They can go there, the cases are heard on priority, and the judgment is given within next few weeks. So that is why, and that also reduces the burden on the regular judiciary. If we will abolish these Sharia courts, then more and more Muslim women and men will file cases in the court, and that will overburden the court. Second is that India is a secular country, which means each and every religion has a right to freely propagate and practice their own religion. And as we have discussed, secularism in India is different from the secularism of the West. Secularism of the West is more of atheism. Secularism of India is about multiculturalism, where no religion is considered as the religion of the state, and where each and every religion is equally supported and they are equal in the eyes of laws. So that is also that also means that every community should have the right to establish their courts. The Nagas have their own courts, the Mizos have their own courts. Why don't the Muslims should have their own courts? That is also an argument which is given. Third is that it will be just an advisory body. So see, it has been clearly people say that it is in parallel to the courts, but it is not, because the All India Muslim Personal Board says that it's just an advisory body. Whether you accept the judgment or not accept the judgment, it is up to you. It is up to you whether you accept or not. We just give you advice. If you have any problem, you go to regular court. So therefore, what is the problem in that? We are not creating any parallel institution. Why the Sharia court should be allowed? Why they should not be allowed? Well, firstly, the people say that they are not arbitration centers. Arbitration centers, you have these counselors who tell you, who guide you. But in this case, in Sharia courts, you have muftis as judges. And also, in this arbitration and mediation, an issue can only be referred only when both the parties agree to it. and choose their own counselors. So therefore, it cannot be compared with arbitration centers. Secondly, these Sharia courts misled people. So people say that the argument that there is hardly any appeal from the judgments of Sharia court, which proves that the Sharia court, the people voluntarily accept the judgments of Sharia court, but closer understanding would realize that these Sharia courts actually, they invoke fear among the ladies and the men to accept their orders. They believe that if you don't accept the order, it will be anti-Islamic, it will be un-Islamic, you will rot in hell. All these pressures are invoked on them, and on that basis, they kind of force their decision on the persons. Next is that international operation argument is flawed. So people say that they have international operation argument that even in UK they have allowed, but closely observing that also finds out that in UK they have Sharia councils which are not courts, and they only give some advice to those who voluntarily choose to use them to resolve their civil and family disputes. So they say that it's not a kind of a court as we have in India. So ultimately, as my individual view is that they should not be allowed. Why should we allow any kind of court for any kind of we have a normal court system which does well, because end of the day Sharia courts are regressive. The kind of punishment they have is not really according to the standards of modern civilized democratic society. So that is my personal opinion, but if a question would not come exactly on Sharia court, it could come on the way of like personal thing, that a question could come in the exam about personal matters, that should state interfere in the personal matters or not. That could be a probable question in your exam. So this ends the main issues of the week. We will be next starting with the prelims issues of the week. Let's start with the prelims issues of the week. This week there have been a lot of issues of prelims, a lot of them. So we first start with the first issue, which is Niti Aayog not to panel for denotified semi-nomadic and nomadic tribes. So before we come to the news, let us first understand what do we mean by denotified semi-nomadic and nomadic tribe. So when in 19th century there was a problem of thuggy. So if you have been a follower of Bollywood, Amir Khan is making a new movie which is called as Thugs of Hindustan, which is actually made on a guy who has actually killed some thousands of people using the thuggy technique. So this thuggy thing used to be like that there used to be a thug group. They used to befriend a fellow traveler, and then after the traveler had full faith on those persons, what they used to do is they used to strangulate them, and some of them used to chop their heads. And after that head they used to keep in front of goddess Kali, because they believe that it is goddess Kali which have told them to do this thing. And then they used to loot all the belongings of that traveler. So to counter that thug thing, because there have been some tribes which were associated with this thug business. So to counter that thing, British came up with an act which is known as Criminal Tribes Act. And this act targeted these communities which were involved in in thuggery. And what they used to do is that this act mandated that these communities have to go to the magistrate. They have to register to the magistrate every week or every month, so that the government should have the idea about the activities of these people. So when India got independence, naturally, you cannot have a separate discriminating treatment for a particular group. So this criminal tribes act, or these criminal tribes, this act was repealed, and that is why the communities which were called as criminal tribes, their name was changed to denotified tribes. Denotified means that they were earlier the criminal tribe. Earlier there was notification in the law which proclaimed them as criminals. Now that proclamation has been it has been removed, and that is why it is now they are known as denotified tribes. When we talk of nomadic tribes, these are those tribes which are always on the run. They don't have a particular place. So during a season they go. So like tribes like Kalbelia, Banjara, all these they kind of travel for their food, for their living. So they are called as nomadic tribes. Now the problem is that the condition of both these denotified tribes, even though the law now does not say that they are criminals, but the social condition of these tribes are still very bad. I mean, they still have the stigma. They still live with the stigma attached with that their ancestors were criminals. Same goes with the nomadic tribes. They hardly have any land. They are landless. Their representation in the central government is very low. So both of them are given OBC quota. But as you know, in OBC quota there is very high competition. So the condition is really bad. So in order to improve the condition and to suggest the measures to improve the condition of these tribes, government appointed a commission under the leadership of Bhikkhu Ramji Idate in 2014 or probably 2015. This panel gave its report recently, and it recommended that there should be a separate commission which should be established like the backward class commission, like the SC/ST commission, like the women commission. There should be a separate commission which should be established for these nomadic tribes and these denotified tribes, and this commission should be headed by a member of that community, and it should ensure that the proper safeguards which are given for these tribes, they are implemented in letter and spirits. Also, other recommendations of that panel was that these nomadic tribes and these denotified tribes, they should also be given separate reservation in the government jobs. I mean, right now they are in OBC, but they should be given a separate reservation. Also, it recommended that the Prevention of Atrocities Act should also be applied on them. So these are some of the recommendations which this panel gave. The panel name was Idate panel. Now Niti Aayog has said that we also support the demand of Idate panel to have a proper commission for these people. Let's move to the next issue, which is Khelo India Talent Identification and Development Scheme. So this scheme has been launched by Sports Authority of India, and the purpose of the scheme is to provide scholarship to the budding athletes, so the athletes which has a potential to do big in the international events. So there will be a talent identification committee which will be established, and that will have that will have members who are Arjuna awardees or who are Dronachari awardees, and this committee will identify the name of athletes which have a high potential and which require support. After these athletes will be identified, they would be given an annual stipend of 1.2 lakhs, and the money will be given quarterly. So 30,000 rupees every quarter. This will take care of their expenses, which include their training expenses, their boarding expenses, and their lodging expenses. So this is a scheme to ensure that India wins medal in the future Olympics and other world events. Next is a student caddying. So in this you have to remember one thing: the name of the scheme launched by Sports Authority of India and what it will do. Next is the student police cadet program. So this program is launched by Ministry of Home Affairs, and what it will do is that it will focus on the students of class 8th and 9th, and what it will do is that every month there will be one class which will be focusing on this, and the topic in the class that will be discussed would be two things. First is crime prevention and control, and second thing which will be discussed will be values and ethics. So two things will be discussed in the monthly class that will take place. In this, because students should be better citizens, so the people will train them how to be better citizens, how to be vigilant, how to and also it will tell them about values and ethics. You should respect your elders, you should have the discipline, you should have empathy, and towards the poor. All these values, also you should have civic sense. All these things will be developed in the class. The idea behind the program is to make the students a better human being and also to be a more responsible citizen. And in the case of police, it will help police to improve its image, and it will also help police to win the trust of the people. Next is Iran becomes India's second largest oil supplier. So recently, Iran has become, between April to June, the recent figures say that Iran is now the second largest oil, or we are the second largest oil importer to India. Last year, Iran was, or last year the stats were different because state refiners in India, they actually had curbed import from the Iran, because this was done in protest against Iran, because Iran gave the development rights for the giant Farzan B gas field to the other parties. So in response to that, the refiners in India, they curbed the import from Iran. So this was kind of a message given to Iran that if you will not take care of India's interest, we will import it from other countries. Now this year, why the import has surged? It is because Iran has offered almost free shipping and extended credit period on oil sales. See, Iran, as you know, is in bad condition after the sanctions from the US. So now Iran wants to have a favorable deal with India. So it is giving a very favorable deal to the Indian oil refiners or oil refining companies, and that is why they have started to import more from the Iran. Next is NCTE Amendment Bill. So this bill has been passed recently. NCTE bill means the National Council for Teachers Education Amendment Bill. Now, what does this bill do? This bill will grant retrospective recognition to central and state institutions that are conducting teachers education courses without NCTE approval. So there were a lot of institutes in India that were conducting teachers education courses and they had not taken NCTE approval. Now the people, the teachers that were trained from these institutes, there was the danger of their degree which will be or their degree being de-recognized, and if their degree will be re-recognized, they will be of nowhere. Their jobs will be in danger, their family will be in danger. Therefore, in order to ensure that the people who have taken degree from the institutes, their career is not suffered, this amendment bill has been passed, and this amendment bill says that all the institutes that provided training to these teachers who are not recognized by NCTE, they will be recognized, and therefore the people who have taken degree from these institutes, their degree will also be valid. Next is Kerala trumps, or Kerala is rank 1 in the Public Affairs Index 2018. So this is an index. It's a multi-dimensional index, which talks about that which state is governed the best, and it is conducted by, or it is compiled by Public Affairs Center in Bangalore. So there are 10 themes on the basis of which it decides which state is performing best, and this includes essential infrastructure, support to human development, social protection, women and children, and law and order. And also the states are divided into big states and small states. So in 2018, this center or this index, it took 10 broad themes, 30 focus subjects, and 100 indicators. And all these indicators were basically the government report. So it was basically the government data which this index used. And based on that, it said that Kerala is the best performing state in this index, and it is followed by Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and Karnataka. So this is the ranking of this index. Next is Unnat Bharat Abhiyan 2.0. So Unnat Bharat Abhiyan was launched last year, or probably last year. Recently, government has launched the 2.0 version of the program. So difference between earlier and this program is that the earlier program only focused on connecting the IITs and few institutes from to the village. This program extends that to something around 748 institutes. 748 institutes in India will be connected with the village. So what does this program deal about, or how does this program deal about? See, every institute is it's mandated to take care of 5 villages, which would mean that these institutes, the students from these institutes, the faculty of this institute, they would go to these 5 assigned villages. They will look into the problems of those villagers, and they will provide innovative solutions to the problem of those villagers. So idea is to increase or improve the practicality of the teaching programs in the institutes, because problem in India is that the education in India is completely theoretical. They have no idea about what is the condition is, or what the condition is in the villages. So idea of the program is that the institute will go to the villages, they will understand the problems, and they will provide solutions to the problems of these villages. If there is some research which will be going on in that institute, and that research has a potential in reforming or in improving the condition in villages, then those students and faculty members will introduce that research on that village, or it will introduce that innovation on that village. So that's why it will be. Both will benefit. The villagers will benefit from the expertise of these educated individuals, and these individuals will benefit because they will know the ground realities, or they will know the situation at the grassroots level. Next is Study in India program. So this program will be implemented by EDCIL India Limited. And as the name suggests, this program, the main purpose of this program is to motivate or to incentivize the students from our neighboring countries and from those countries from which India receives a lot of foreign students to come and study in India. Because see, education is also a big part of soft power. It gives a country a soft power. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to make education, this program tries to make India an education hub for the foreign students. So another purpose of this program is to improve the overall quality of education in India so that it attracts more foreign students. It also tries to reduce the export and import imbalance in the number of international students. So it tries to ensure that there are a lot of students who go from India to West. So it tries, and that is a loss to India's foreign exchange. So it tries to compensate that loss by increasing the inflow of foreign students from other developing countries, so that we get foreign exchange from those students which we lose whenever students migrate to, or whenever students go to foreign universities. Other kind of objective of the scheme is to increase the global rankings of India. So what are the key features of this program? So it will focus on 30 countries, and these 30 countries are those countries from which India has been receiving a comparable number of foreign students. So these countries are countries from Southeast Asia, Middle East and Africa. Also, it invises participation of selected reputed Indian institutes and universities by way of offering seats for international students at affordable rate. So it also focuses that, because right now the fees for the foreign students is very high in some universities. Now these students feel, rather than paying so much and coming to India, what we can do is, in that same amount, we can travel to West. So this program will also focus on rationalizing fees for foreign students. This program does not offer any scholarships. However, fee waivers will be provided for meritorious students, and this can land from 25% to 100%. Next is Poshan Abhiyan. So this Poshan Abhiyan is technically it's a Hindi name of National Nutrition Mission, and it was in news in PIB, that is why I took it. It will be implemented by Ministry of Women and Child. So this is something, because it's related to health, people could think that it will be implemented by Ministry of Health, but it will be implemented by Ministry of Women and Child. And its aim is to ensure holistic development and adequate nutrition for pregnant women, mothers, and children. So, under this Abhiyan, it will not have a complete different program. What it will do is try, or the aim of this program is to ensure coordination of different schemes which are related to nutrition. So, right now there are 30 to 35 schemes which are related to nutrition, which is being run by the center and the state government. But there is no convergence between the schemes. All of them are running, in a completely isolated way. So the main idea of this program is that it will try to converge the schemes. It will try to ensure that, and second thing it will do is that it will monitor and review implementation of all such schemes and utilize existing structural arrangements of line ministries wherever available. So, main purpose of this program is to ensure, monitor, converge, and review the implementation of already running nutrition-related schemes of the central and the state government. Next is privilege motion. So, this privilege motion was in news recently because the opposition party has appealed to the speaker that they want to invoke this privilege motion against Prime Minister and Defense Minister for speaking lies to the nation on Rafale deal. So, what is parliamentary privilege? So, parliamentary privilege are rights and duties and rights and immunities enjoyed by the members of parliament, and they have been given to the members in order to ensure that they can function or they can discharge their duty without any fear. So this privilege is both individual, so every MP has its individual privilege, and there is also collective privilege of all the members of the house. Whenever any rights or whenever any of these rights and immunities is disregarded, the offence is called as a breach of the privilege, and it is punishable under the law of parliament. So a notice is moved in the form of motion by any member of the house against those that member considers guilty of breach of privilege. So if I am a member, I can move a motion in the parliament against any other individual of the house which I feel has breached which I believe is a guilty of breach of privilege. So what are the rules regarding governing privilege? So in Rajya Sabha and in Lok Sabha, any member with the consent of either speaker or the chairman of the house raise a question involving the breach of privilege either of a member or of the house of committee thereof. So a notice has to be given to the speaker at 10 a.m. or before 10 a.m. and it is the discretion of the speaker whether to accept that notice or not to accept the notice. So first thing a speaker can do is that it can accept the motion, or it can send the motion to the scrutiny of the privilege committee, and then privilege committee will recommend the speaker that this should be or this should be accepted or rejected. But that the recommendation of the privilege committee is not mandatory on the speaker. So he can either accept the recommendation of that privilege committee or it can reject the recommendation of the privilege committee. And if we talk of privilege committee, the privilege committee has 15 members in Lok Sabha. In Rajya Sabha, they have 10 members. In Rajya Sabha, the privilege committee is headed by the deputy chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. Right? In Lok Sabha, it can be headed by anyone selected by the speaker. Let's go to the next issue, which is Invest India. So Invest India was in news recently because Invest India and Business France has signed a MOU to promote investment facilitation and cooperation between startups of India and France. That's why it was in news. So Invest India is the national investment promotion and facilitation agency of India. So what does it do? Invest India is the first point of reference for investors in India. So if any investor, any foreign investor wants to invest in India, first it will approach Invest India. Invest India is actually a private company where the government has some shareholding. So according to it's a joint venture company between Department of Industrial Policy and FICCI and State Government of India. So 35% of the share is with the government and 51% of the share is with the FICCI and 0.5% is the share of the state government. So ultimately it's a private company. So any investor who wants to invest in India, it will approach the Invest India. Now Invest India will advise him which areas to invest, which state to invest, which sector to invest, the rules and the procedures, everything, what rules to follow, how can the process be smoothened up, all these things. The first point of reference if when any investors come to India to invest is by approaching the Invest India. So Invest India go Invest tells him about them, and then based on that Invest India or that investor invests in India. Next is National Overseas Scholarship for Scheduled Caste. So this is a central sector scheme, which means that the state do not have any contribution. Central sector scheme. Identify for prelims, identify these keywords. It's a central sector scheme. And it will be implemented by Ministry of Social Justice. And the key features of the scheme include, as the name suggests, that it's a scholarship scheme for the students belonging to the scheduled caste category, and it provides assistance to the candidates for pursuing master level course and PhD abroad in an accredited institution/university. And 30% of the award will be given to the female candidates, and there will be no state-wise quota of slots under the scheme. Next is Atal Innovation. Next is Innovate India platform. So this Innovate India platform is a collaboration between Atal Innovation Mission and my government. And it will serve as a common point for all the innovation happening across the nation. So anybody who has downloaded this platform this portal, they can upload the innovation which they have done, or they know somebody else has done. So all the innovation of which is happening in India will be uploaded in this platform. So it will register all the grassroots and deep tech innovations at the national level. And any user of this platform, they can view, they can comment, and they can share, and they can rate the innovations which are crowdsourced on the Innovate India platform. Next is Mahila Shakti Kendra scheme. So this Mahila Shakti scheme is has been recently launched by the Ministry of Women and Child, and the scheme is advised to work at various levels and at the national level and the state level, and to give some technical support to the respective government on issues related to the women. So in all the states, the sharing will be based on 60% center, 40 state. In Northeast it will be 90 center, 10 states. So according to the scheme, there will be community engagements through college student volunteers, and they would try to they would raise awareness among the society that why we should be good with the women. They will also raise awareness about the schemes which government has launched for the women. Also, there will be district level centers for women, which will be established in 640 districts in the country. Next is that Tribal Affairs Ministry plans to bottle mahua. So what is this mahua? Those who are from the tribal regions, they must be aware of this. Mahua is actually a tree which is found in the jungles of central India, and the tree has flowers, and from these flowers we generate this local or what you as country alcoholic beverages. Also, the tree is used for generating or the seeds from the fruit produce oil that serves as a source for cooking, lighting oil lamps, manufacturing soaps, and curing many skin ailments. So also there is the butter which is extracted from mahua. So all these things are extracted from mahua. This tree is considered as sacred by the local tribals, and a lot of their in rural areas you don't have this IMFL or Indian made for liquor. Usually the tribals they drink mahua. Now what government is trying to do is, or tribal ministry is trying to do is, it is planning to bottle the mahua. So ultimately till now mahua has a kind of a informal supply. What government will do is, government will properly package it in a proper bottle, like we have a beer bottle, we will have a mahua bottle, and it will be sold in the liquor shops in the urban areas, in the metro cities. It will also be exported abroad. So idea is to marketize the mahua, which according to many experts is a more or less or more health friendly liquor in comparison to whiskey and beer. It will also benefit the tribals, because ultimately it will be the tribals of Bastar who will be benefiting from that. In the long run, it will also help in curbing the Naxalite problem. because it will generate economic returns for the tribals in these areas. Actually, Maua was actually very famous, but now with IMFL coming in the market, the sale and purchase of Maua has been decreased. So government again wants to reinvoke the old Indian tradition of drinking Maua. Next is India will get its first publicly owned freight corridor. So this freight corridor, it is actually 190-kilometer railway line between Dadri in UP and Fulera in Rajasthan. And it will fall under the Western dedicated freight corridor. So before we go into, we should also explain the dedicated freight corridor project. So this is the so right now the problem in India is that the railway lines in the railway lines, both the passenger trains and the freight trains, they both travel in the same railway line. The consequence of which is that the speed of these freight trains are very slow, sometimes 30 kilometers, sometimes 20 kilometers per hour, and it also leads to the congestion problem. So government has planned that there will be a dedicated freight corridor for the freight trains. So in that freight corridor, there will be no passenger trains that will travel in those corridor. For that, they have started this project of dedicated freight corridors. So there are two projects in India. First is Western dedicated freight corridor, and second is Eastern dedicated freight corridors. When we talk of Western dedicated freight corridors, this will actually connect uh, Dadri to Mumbai. These names are important for pre-information. And when we talk of Eastern dedicated freight corridors, this will cover from Ludhiana to Dankuni. What you also have to remember is from how many states they are passing and which are the states from which these corridors are crossing. This is also important for your prelims information. See, ultimately, traveling or taking freight through railways is also much friendly option, because when you talk of mostly in India, the freight is carried by trucks. Trucks are very polluting, and when we if we take it to train, it will be less polluting, because mostly your trains are electric trains. So therefore, government also believes that dedicated freight corridor would incentivize the people to send their freights through trains, and that will also be a more environment friendly option. So other than increasing the or reducing the cost, it will also increase that. It will also save the time, and it will also be environmental friendly. Next is FDI confidence index. So this FDI confidence index is launched by 80 yearly report. about this year's index, India has fallen out of the top 10 FDI or top 10 destinations for FDI in terms of its attractiveness. So India is ranked 11th in this year's index. It was ranked as 8th in 2017 and it was ranked 9th in 2016. So the reason why the ranking has been reduced is because of GST and demonetization that has troubled the investors, that has reduced the attractiveness of India. Also, but this report says that India has taken number of steps like liberalization of FDI in some key sectors, and that will boost FDI in India in the long run. Let's move to the second last topic of the day, which is Center widens petroleum's definition to cover both hydrocarbon. So government has amended the Petroleum and Natural Gas Rules 1915 to include shale in the definition of petroleum, and this change will allow the private companies to explore and produce the resources in the blocks they already upload in the blocks they already operate. So as you know that in the health policy, a person is given a unified license, which means that he can, if he gets a block, he can explore oil, gas, shale gas, coal, but anything from that allocated blocks. But the rules, the older rules of 1959 defines petroleum in a very narrow way. It says petroleum only includes oil and gas. So with this help, we needed to change the definition, and that is why government enhanced the definition, or it is widen the definition of the term petroleum. Next is, and the last topic is Mission Satyanishma. So this Mission Satyanishta is actually a program of the government, and it's a program on ethics in public government. It's launched by the Ministry of Railways, and the motive of the program is to improve the ethics and integrity of the officials who are working in the railway sector. So it aims at sensitizing all railway employees about the need to adhere to the good ethics and to maintain high standards of integrity at work. So this is the topics for the week. We will be meeting next week. Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil State.